Hey everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality 265, Hotel, Restaurant, and Travel Law. This week's going to be a little bit different, and I'll go over that in just a second with some of the different um, assignments that we have due. But first, I wanted to go over something I encountered that I think is relevant to all of us in this course, but something I encountered last week in it was a place in Travelers Rest called What Ails You. It's just a local uh, place there to Travelers Rest that has different craft beers on tap quite frequently, has trivia, food, trucks, those kinds of things. But I was over with some friends, and I had a representative from another brewery. I wouldn't say local, I'd say more regional to us, who decided to let people at our table know some of the things that had been going on legally with their brewery. So, needless to say, this was something that was either currently uh, uh, being either investigated or um, tried, litigated, however you want to put it, or something that has previously passed in which it's okay to talk about, but you just have to determine if it's the right place or the right time. But essentially, what had happened was a quote unquote rival brewery or just another competing brewery in their area had struck an agreement with their head brewer to basically sabotage their business for their own increased market share. So they had gotten with the head brewer and said, all right, if you'll find a way to tamper with the recipes and make unsellable, undrinkable product, also purposefully dispose of some product, then we will compensate you financially as well, giving them some of the recipes and information um, that they used. And, I guess you could consider this one of those as seen on TV scenarios, but those types of things do exist. And while those kinds of things, can be proven and lawyers typically get involved and, you know, there are fines levied against people and businesses, um, that's probably not something that we would ever want to talk about um, with random people or even people that we have some sort of a relationship with. Those are things that we would typically want to keep in-house on more of a need to know basis. But again, just something that I encountered that I wanted to bring up to each of you. All right, getting in to this week's material. We're actually, if you look at our course plan here, you can see that I made a typo in week 4 where I just put chapter 4 business contracts. It's supposed to say chapter 4 and chapter 5, but both quizzes are still stated there as due, so you realized that there are 2 quizzes due this week. That did not change, but of course quiz number 5 comes based on the information in quiz number 4. And the reason we did that is because these are 2 relatively short chapters that you'll see um, there for you. So reading should not take you very long, and a lot of this kind of stuff is very important, especially when it comes to contracts. Chapter 4 is contract basics, which we all need. No matter how basic, I always seem to learn something new every time I read about contracts. And then chapter number 5 is the significant hospitality contracts. And really, when you look at that, it's heavy on the franchisee and franchisor um, information, but there are some really good details in here, especially with like attrition and our cancellation policies, license and permitting use. There are also some really good examples, especially in chapter 5, let me go into the page here, on page 88, of our different types of contracts, especially when it comes to like meeting space, lodging, and those kinds of things. It's really, really good. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at some of those. But just hitting a couple of the main points here. Again, contract basics. Of course, your Quizlet definitions are linked to your course content, and your Kahoot for chapters 4 and 5 are both there as well in those individual chapters. Excuse me. But when you look at chapter 4, one of the really good parts to it, I think, is looking when we think about a contract on page 64, we talk about the Uniform Commercial Code. One thing to always realize, even if this is just you personally doing something, but sales of more than $500 should always be in writing and agreed upon by both parties. There should be an executed contract for that. Moving over to page 67, in the box there that starts 8 steps to follow when entering contracts. Guys, this is really, really important. And again, you can read just the number. 1, get it in writing. 2, read the contract thoroughly. You can get information just from that, but reading through each one of those numbered items really does help. One thing that I wanted to point out as a business owner that sometimes relies on third parties is number 6, ensuring the performance of third parties. Just for example, for me, owning a brewery, we utilize food trucks quite often, and we used to get into the predicament where, okay, you're having a corporate event or a wedding reception or a rehearsal dinner or a retirement party, and we don't physically offer you food. We don't cook anything on site. We don't have a kitchen or anything like that. We just handle the beverage side. Well, a lot of times when you have a 6, 7 p.m. start time for an event, you need some type of food. So it always be like, yeah, we can work on a food truck for you. So we would call XYZ food truck and say, hey, can you come over? We've got 150 people. They want to spend this. What do you think? And we would say, all right, well, we'll charge them $10 a person. This is the menu, and then we'll pay you. Well, the problem got to be where, what happens if the food truck breaks down, or what happens if they don't fulfill the order that they're supposed to? So again, in step number 6 there, it talks to you about ensuring the performance of those third parties, and we obviously try to work with the ones that we know best, but again, you need to make sure that works. So we actually moved to in this example, we moved to you secure your own food truck caterer, or the food that you bring in. You actually will put you in contact with someone, but then you handle everything from there. Because again, we're driving to, somewhere to get barbecue or pizza or something that we can easily serve that doesn't get us in trouble legally. It's kind of hard to do at the last minute. So nonetheless, make sure you're paying attention, especially to number 6 there. Like I said, going into chapter 5, when you talk about the significant hospitality contracts, really that's more about specifics of those hospitality contracts. Think about the contracts that you have in place. I actually posted if you go to week 4, or excuse me, chapter 4 on your course content, I posted a funny little video here. The Seinfeld reservation video. And again, this is a clip from Seinfeld. It's an old TV show, Jerry Seinfeld, obviously, if you're not familiar with it. But it's a TV show that aired for 10 or 12 years from the 90s into the early 2000s. And be honest with you, I watched it a lot. So to me, again, I know the point, but it's a show about nothing. But there's a really good point in there about someone making a rental car reservation, or Seinfeld making a rental car reservation and it kind of going wrong. But if you look at chapter 5, it's the flip side of that. If we have a contract, we have to honor our side, and then obviously the flip side is the customer, client, guest, whoever it might be, has to honor their side as well. Where's that give and take, and how does that work? So Um, Staying in chapter 4, this day in the life of a hospitality manager, it's a big deal. This exact thing happens very, very often. I remember working at the Westin Poinsett downtown Greenville, and quite often, due to attrition, and you'll see that in chapter 5, um, we would oversell rooms. So if you have 120 rooms, you may sell 124 or 125 because you know the typical um, analysis of attrition is going to say that some people are not going to show up. But you better have a policy or a program in place that you have ready if all those people do show up, and that's kind of what you get there in a day in the life of a hospitality manager for chapter 4. Having an idea of what what you're going to do there. I've got a lot of stories on that if anybody is interested in how I've handled that before. But again, that's chapter 4. Don't forget, you've got the quiz, you've got a Kahoot there, you've got your legalese flashcards for Quizlet. Little video here on the UCC Uniform Commercial Code, which we kind of just briefed over a little bit. Do not forget your attendance grade for week 4. That's there for you. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Some people have been missing those throughout the week, and I don't know if they're just overlooking them or what, but those are due each week too, so make sure you're going through and you do see that. We go over to chapter number 5 now. You'll see your Kahoots, and it looks like I need to link up our Quizlet, but I'll get that done for you as soon as we get off of this video here, but your quiz is available there. And then there's another example of a day in the life of a hospitality manager. Now, because it was my error and not putting chapter 5 here, and there being 2 quizzes due this week, I've actually taken away the discussion board question for the week. So the attendance question for chapters 4 and chapter 5 will actually double as your discussion board. So you won't have a discussion board for this week. You'll just have your attendance question for both chapter 4 and chapter 5. Both of those will be, of course, in your course content. Looking over my notes here, again, I think the most important thing is to realize that there are 2 different types of contracts, verbal and written. The UCC tells us that if we have anything over $500, then we need to have it in writing, and it needs to be agreed upon by both parties. But there is some really good information, again, in both chapter 4 and chapter 5 when it comes to contracts and then hospitality industry specific contracts. As always, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to let me know. And I look forward to reading your attendance results and seeing those quiz grades. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk to you again next week.